You are certain of one thing. Right now, in this moment, that you are real. Not philosophically real, not metaphorically real, actually real. Sitting here, breathing, thinking, experiencing. You have never doubted this. Not once. Not seriously. And that certainty, that absolute, unquestioned certainty, is the very thing this is about. Because somewhere, thousands of years ago, in a tradition that examined human experience with the precision of a surgeon and the patience of a mountain, a group of sages sat with a question that no one before them had dared to ask this carefully. Not, what is the world made of? But, what is the one who is experiencing it? What they found did not destroy reality. It changed the one looking at it forever. The Sanskrit word for what they discovered is Maya. And by the time this is over, you will not be able to look at your own thoughts the same way again. There is something that happens to you every single night. Without warning, without permission, without fail. Your entire world disappears. Not slowly, completely. Your name? Gone. Your problems? Gone. Your memories, your relationships, your sense of who you are, completely gone. And you do not panic. You do not resist. You surrender to it willingly and wake up having never questioned it. It is called sleep. But that is not the interesting part. The interesting part is what the sages noticed about what happens inside it. Inside sleep, you enter another reality, a place where the dead speak, where you fall from heights and feel the impact, where you run from something without knowing what it is. Time bends. Logic dissolves. Impossible things feel completely natural. You walk through places that do not exist. You speak to people who are not there. You feel fear, joy, grief, love, as if it were all real. And inside that world, you never stop to ask, is this real? Because in that moment, it is completely, undeniably real. Until you wake up. And just like that, an entire reality collapses. What felt certain becomes nothing. What felt real is dismissed as imagination. The ancient sages noticed this and gave it something remarkable. Not just a name, a map. Described in the Mandukya Upanishad, one of the oldest and most precise texts ever written, they said, there are 3 states of experience: waking, dreaming, deep sleep. 3 worlds, each feeling complete from the inside, each dissolving the moment you leave it. And here is the question they refuse to let go of. If three entire worlds can rise and fall, which one is finally real? And more importantly, who is the one experiencing all three? This question did not lead them to despair. It led them inward. They examined experience the way a scientist examines the physical world, with rigor, with honesty, with no interest in comfortable answers. What they found was not a theory. It was a recognition. And it was given a name: Maya. Not illusion as in fake, not illusion as in non-existent, illusion as in misunderstood. The word comes from the Sanskrit root ma, to measure, to construct. Maya is the great measurer, the force that constructs a world of separate, bounded things out of something that is boundless. Something real, experienced through a lens that distorts it without your knowledge. A lens you cannot see, because you are using it to do the seeing. Later, in the 8th century, the philosopher Adi Shankaracharya gave this idea its fullest and most precise form in the school of thought called Advaita Vedanta, non-dual Vedanta, the philosophy that says, beneath all apparent multiplicity, there is only one undivided, unchanging reality. The sages called it Brahman. And Maya, Shankaracharya said, is what makes the one appear to be many. But how? Through two forces working together in silence. Maya does not work with one hand. It works with two. The first is called Avarana Shakti, the power of veiling, like a cloud that covers the sun. Maya conceals Brahman, the infinite, present, unchanging ground of all existence, hidden in plain sight, not gone, never gone, just unseen. And the moment something infinite is hidden, the mind cannot rest in emptiness. So the second power moves, Vikshepa Shakti, the power of projection. Like a film thrown onto a screen, Maya projects an entire world onto the reality it has already veiled. Names, forms, boundaries, differences, subjects and objects, you, and everything that is not you. First, the truth is hidden. Then a dream is placed in its way. And you take the dream for the whole of existence. This is Maya. Not one illusion, two forces working together so seamlessly that you never notice either. Now, let us see if you can catch it in motion. Do not think of a white bear. Not its face, not its fur, not even the outline of it. Just avoid it. You saw it, even though you were told not to. It arrived uninvited. It stayed. Now try something else. What is your name? It came instantly. You did not construct it. It was simply there. Now try the opposite. For the next few seconds, do not think of your name. It's still there. You didn't place it there, and you cannot remove it. Now notice what just happened. In both cases, you were not in control. Thoughts appeared on their own, and they stayed. So ask yourself, if you cannot control what arises in your own mind, then who exactly is doing the thinking? And if you are not doing the thinking, then what are you? This is not a trick question. This is the oldest question. And the answer is closer than you think. Before we get to that answer, we need to see how deep the construction goes. You believe you see reality, but what you see is only light, reflected, captured, and interpreted. Your eyes do not show you truth. They show you signals. Your brain constructs a world from them. The color you see does not exist outside you. It is created within your mind. Sound is not what you hear. It is vibration translated into experience. Pain is not in the wound. It is in the mind interpreting the wound. Everything you experience is processed, filtered, shaped, and then handed to you as reality, without a note that says, "This is an interpretation." You receive it as fact. And why wouldn't you? It is all you have ever known. But here is what the sages noticed. If the world you experience is constructed by your mind, what happens when the mind turns toward itself? Look at yourself. Not in a mirror. At the idea of yourself. Your name. Your personality. Your history. Your beliefs. You think of these as you. Fixed. Continuous. Real. But the child you once were no longer exists. The thoughts you had 5 years ago have changed. The beliefs you were once certain of have shifted. The person you will be in 10 years has not yet arrived. And yet, between what has disappeared and what has not yet formed, you construct a story. A continuous narrative called me. You don't remember becoming this person. You only remember being told that you are. Now hold that thought, because if your senses filter the world and your mind constructs identity, then what exactly are you standing on? There is a story as old as the teaching itself. A man walks through dim evening light. He sees a snake on the path. His heart races. His breath shortens. His body floods with fear. He stops. He waits. When more light arrives, nothing has changed. The rope was always a rope. The snake was never there. This, called Rajju Sarpa Bhram in Sanskrit, rope-snake confusion, is the central image of Vedantic teaching. Maya is not the rope. Maya is not the snake. Maya is the misunderstanding, the layer between what is and what is seen. And notice something important. The fear was real. The heartbeat was real. The experience was completely real, but the cause of it never existed. This is the precision of Maya. It does not fabricate experience. It misdirects the meaning of it. And the question that follows is the one the Upanishads have been quietly building toward. If the snake was never real, who was the one watching? Here is something to sit with. If you can see a thought, it cannot be you. A mirror cannot see itself. A lamp cannot illuminate itself. But something in you can observe thought. Who is watching the thoughts arise? Who noticed the white bear arrive and refuse to leave? Who saw the name that would not go? There is something in you that observes, that watches thoughts come and go like clouds across an open sky, that is present in the dream and present when the dream collapses, that is present in waking and present in deep sleep as the one who wakes knowing they have slept. The sages call this the Sakshi, the witness, always present, never changing, never touched by what passes through it. And behind even the witness, the Mandukya Upanishad speaks of something deeper still. Turiya, the fourth, not a fourth state of experience, but the ground beneath all three. The awareness that makes waking possible, the awareness that makes dreaming possible, the awareness that holds even the silence of deep sleep. Not a personality, not a story, not something you acquire or achieve. Pure consciousness, the very light by which all three states become visible. What the Upanishads call Sat, Chit, Ananda, being, consciousness, bliss. Three words pointing at one reality, the very nature of Brahman itself, which Maya has spent your entire life quietly concealing. And you cannot observe it from the outside because you are not separate from it. You are it, looking for itself in the only place it hasn't thought to look. This is where many traditions stop. They say, the world is illusion, walk away from it. It is nothing. But Shankaracharya was more careful than that, and more honest. He did not say the world doesn't exist. He said it exists at the level of ordinary experience, like a dream exists while you are inside it. He gave this a name, Vyavaharika, conventional reality. It is real enough to stub your toe on, real enough to love in, real enough to grieve in, real enough to act in. This is not dismissed, this is honored, but it is not the deepest truth. The deepest truth, Paramarthika, the absolute, is Brahman alone. One, undivided, uncreated, unchanged by everything that rises and falls within it. The way a screen is unchanged by every image projected upon it. The way space is unchanged by everything that fills it. And here, right here, is where the teaching becomes something you can actually feel rather than only understand. The moment you begin to sense this, not intellectually, but in the stillness beneath your thoughts, something shifts, quietly, but irreversibly. The world remains the same. Your life continues, but your relationship to it changes. Fear softens, not because it disappears, but because you begin to see what was afraid. And what was afraid is much smaller than what you are. Attachment loosens, not because things stop mattering, but because you stop confusing what you have with what you are. Nothing changes outside, but the one who was struggling with it is no longer the same. Clarity appears, not as an answer, not as a conclusion, but as stillness beneath the questions. The way the ocean is still, even when its surface moves. You were always the ocean. Maya simply convinced you that you were the wave. Tonight, when you close your eyes and the world dissolves and the name disappears, notice something. There is something present in that final moment before sleep, something that watches everything fade. It does not sleep. It does not dream. It does not wake. It simply is. The light that makes waking visible. The light that makes dreaming visible. The light that holds even the darkness of deep sleep and knows it. The sages called it Chit, pure consciousness, the second syllable in the name of all that is. Sat, Chit, Ananda, being, consciousness, bliss. It has been there, behind every thought, every fear, every version of you that came and went, your entire life. You were not looking for it because you were using it to look. The rope was always a rope. The snake was the story. And you, the one who was afraid, were never the snake. You were the one who saw. You were always the one who saw. You just forgot to turn the light around.
Dun 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 dun. came in silk and smoke.